we all will share our experience, and we'll try to be really short and to share our experience. And I forgot to name myself. My name is Alona Rusnak. I'm State Secretary, Minister of Environment, Republic of Moldova. We're kind of, initiating this event. Yeah, small country, really hard to find it, but we're getting big events, and we reduce the emission the 0.03. So we're doing great.
Aljona, thank you very much, and also a warm welcome from my side to all the participants which are here on site, also participants online. I look at the camera shortly, and also, of course, many thanks to the other colleagues contributing here to the event. I will introduce everybody a bit later. What we want to do today are basically two things. We have two keynote speeches which look at a just transition in NDC, but from the global perspective, and then zooming into national perspectives, also looking at the connection between just transition and NECPs and how that can be anchored there. And we have then time for a discussion. Yes, and I propose we dive right into our side event, and I am very happy to ask Maria José de Villafranca Casas from the New Climate Institute to come up and present a first keynote, called Bridging the Divide. So Maria will talk about paving the way for just transitions and nationally determined contributions. And to share a bit who Maria is, let me give you some information. Maria is an expert in climate action analysis and policy impact assessment in energy and transport. She works for the New Climate Institute and leads projects analyzing the impact of climate targets and actions by countries and high-emission industries, actually. She provides expert advice to stakeholders on climate policies through policy briefs, scientific publications, and practical guidances. And those guidances translate latest research into actionable recommendations. And New Climate Institute, Maria contributes to the Climate Action Tracker. I think many of you know this, and the support project for the implementation of the Paris Agreement. Maria, please, you can go here, or you can stay here, as you prefer.
Thank you, Yuka, for this really nice introduction. So thanks for the opportunity to be here today. I'm gonna just set a little bit the scene and remind everyone on where we're at since the Paris Agreement, and then how that relates to where we're now on the 3.0 at the NDC cycle. So there's been, give or take, 9 years since Paris. There's been, we started with the intended NDCs that became the first NDCs. We had the update cycle, and now we're calling NDCs 3.0. So just seeing how this has been going. And some of you may ask yourselves, okay, is this actually working? So NDCs are at the heart of the Paris Agreement. They're meant to provide this roadmap, but what has happened since? This graph, it's a little bit complicated, but basically shows emissions projections since 2009, which is 2009, sorry. This is when the Climate Action Tracker started. And zooming into 2023, we can see that, well, first of all, looking at the picture, okay, has it done something, the Paris Agreement? And I would say yes. Maybe it's not as fast as one would have expected from this perspective, but emissions are going down. Sadly, the last 3 years they've stalled. So we're a little bit on the, not necessarily still moving down, but at the similar level that we were in Glasgow from this perspective. And if we zoom into what happened last year in 2023, then we can see what the difference is, so what we call the gaps. First of all, the ambition gap, so what's the difference between the climate targets that are set by countries to the benchmark or what the 1.5 aligned Paris Agreement would be, and an even larger gap, the implementation one. So policies on the ground, what countries are actually doing, it's even further away from this benchmark. However, here's the positive. We've actually learned a lot in these 9 years. We have made a lot of progress from the top down within these negotiations and also from the bottom up within the implementation of the NDCs. We have agreed to a transition, to the transparency framework. We've also agreed on phasing out fossil fuels, implementing tripling renewable energy, doubling energy efficiency. So there's been all of that progress, and alongside that progress, there's been also a lot of research that shows what the science means in terms of what is needed, and analysis on what these targets also mean on the national, at the national level and the international, how they compare to one another. So we know more about these targets, and we have more rules about how, or guidances on how to set them. And at the same time, from the bottom up, we've learned what are the challenges to actually bring this to fruition. We have looked into partnerships, we've looked at capacity building, technology transfer, and basically learning from on the ground what's actually stopping or what still we need to work to make this happen. And it's exactly those on the right side, this bottom up, where we see a need for just transition. So we've learned from these, from these challenges, and now it's about how we get those lessons learned and bringing into the new cycle. So at New Climate, besides the Climate Action Tracker, we also look into different countries, and my colleagues authored a publication in I think it was either end of last year or beginning of this year, where they looked a little bit at the Indonesia example. So Indonesia is one of the countries that has JETP, so a Just Energy Transition Partnership. Sorry, a lot of acronyms. And basically, the main findings from this was you need to have just transition not only as part of the UNFC, the update cycle for NDCs, but basically as part of whole government plans. So you need politicians who are really into making just transition a central point, and then basically the documents and the preparation will be an aftermath of that. One also needs stakeholders on the ground, people working in specifically the sectors, and most importantly the energy sector, where we know we need to decarbonize now and phase out fossil fuels to make sure that we don't leave anyone behind. And yeah, I think we will hear more from the examples also from the other panelists here. So I'll keep this brief. Thank you very much.
Maria, thank you very much. As a second keynote, and I directly hand over to you, Monica, I would like to invite Monica Figai, from the Energy Community Secretariat, who does not know Monica yet. She is a climate and just transition expert working for the Secretariat since 2023. But since 2014, she was working as a negotiator for Poland for the Ministry of Climate and Environment on climate files, including the Fit for 55 package, and she was a lead on mitigation for Poland's UNFCCC COP presidency in 2018 in Katowice, which I remember very well. So lots of experience here sitting next to me. Monica, I hand to you.
Thanks, Ilka. Okay, so apart from being a UNFCCC, I think COP junkie, I bet that actually most of you don't really know which organization I work for. It is something called Energy Community, and it's an organization in which on one side we have the EU, and then we have 9 contracting parties, basically the EU neighborhood, and the idea of this organization is to actually create an integrated energy market between these sides. So this is something that we've been working on hard. And I think I'm the supplement, complementing Maria here, because I am the other documents of the title, so the Just Transition and NDC and the other documents. So that's me, because I want to focus on the twin sister or brother of the NDCs, which is the National Energy and Climate Plans. And the presentation, which actually I can see a reflection of, but basically I'll keep the story short and simple. There are a lot of changes happening now in the EU neighborhood. On the one hand, we have accelerated climate ambition that actually has picked up significantly a few years ago. We had the Sofia Declaration in 2020 for the Western Balkans 6 that made a lot of pledges. And it was followed up in 2021, just 1 year later, with the Energy Community Decarbonization Roadmap, when there is talk of a 2050 climate neutrality target, of setting 2030 targets, and so on. And this was actually followed up again another year, 2022, with the climate and energy targets for the energy community, with which many of you would just know as NDCs, actually, because they're to a large extent aligned. So on one hand, we have this accelerated climate ambition, but on the other hand, the energy community is at a crossroad because it's in a very difficult starting place. The number one energy king of the energy community is coal, where the majority of energy is actually produced from this source. But the number two queen, I would say, was hydro. So the average age of fossil fuel infrastructure, concretely power plants in the Western Balkans last year was 46 years old. And they're not going to go on for another 46 years. So there is an imminent change coming, and there is the political ambition to back it up. But it's this very difficult path of actually getting to this vision from a quite difficult starting point, which is the challenge. So there are many benefits to just transition, and I'm not sure it's probably a lot of them are known to you. There are the financial, social benefits. Renewable energy has become cheaper. It is no longer the story a few years ago that this is an expensive fetish. It has actually become a much more competitive source of energy. And there is one more thing actually that we don't talk about so often, is the health impact of status quo. Apart from the fact that the energy infrastructure cannot go on for 46 years, it is actually slowly killing off the population. Yearly, because of air pollution in the Western Balkans, 30,000 people die. So basically, if you implement a change in the energy system, you are literally saving lives. So how does it look at the energy community? We have the decarbonization roadmap, which basically sets the pathway. I'm thinking, since we're in such a cozy setting, maybe instead of pulling my neck muscle, I'll just sit with you here. Yes, thank you. So we have this decarbonization roadmap that sets clear actions with a timeline. This is actually a roadmap that we should be updating every 2 years to make sure it's a living document that aligns itself with the changes that are ongoing also in the EU, because we try to reflect the changes in the EU. So one of the big things is the national energy and climate plans. EU member states have it, but so does the EU neighborhood. And almost all of our contracting parties have made a draft. Some of them have already adopted their NECP. And these documents, they should be consistent with NDCs. They also should be consistent with the long-term strategies. And one of the things that they should be doing is actually addressing just transition. If you look at the content of an NECP, which can be found in something which is called the governance regulation, which the energy community has adapted to its own needs and adopted, you'll find that actually NECPs should include just transition aspects in them. And there's more to it, because when you're reporting on just transition later on, like if you follow the pathway of the EU, when the EU reports on just transition, they talk about depopulation of the region, they talk about gender, they talk about energy poverty. So there's a wide range of aspects that should be covered in NECPs. And we looked at the NECPs because this is one of our mandates that we have. And basically, we found three things. just transition is usually an outsourced measure. It's a one single silo, standalone document that is usually something alongside the NECP. So it's not part of the NECP story. Usually it's a just transition roadmap, which is fine. But the bottom line is, whatever is in the just transition roadmap should also be reflected in the NECP for the reasons that I mentioned, because it affects the development of a region, gender issues, energy poverty, and so on. Second thing we found, many NECPs only focus on employment changes. But it's not only about work, it is about so much more. And there was lack of linkage with other dimensions of the NECP and the Energy Union. For example, on research and innovation, nobody said anything about just transition in research and innovation. But this is actually something that we should be looking into when we're changing energy systems. So my key takeaways, as I mentioned before, next 46 years cannot look like now, because it's just not possible, especially for funding. Even if you want to set up a coal power plant now, and in a few decades from now, it's going to be hard to get the international financing that's needed. And energy transition should be planned in a coherent and consistent way. Whatever you put in your NDC, please put in your NECP, please put in your LTS, and please put everywhere so we have one story to tell. And this is important for investors, because if they're putting into money into something, they want to see consistency. Yeah, and as I think said at the beginning, NDCs and NECPs should be like a brother and sister. So yeah, from my side, that's it. Ilka, thanks.
Monika, thank you very much, Maria, as well, for your inputs. So we received a bit of a, I don't want to say theoretical structure on what needs to happen, but really, let's say, the insights on how things can work and good arguments for linking just transition to NDCs and NECPs and the related documents. What we would like to do now is do a bit of a ground truthing, I would say, and see what do experiences in the countries say. And of course, also have you joined the discussion very much. And as I am just moderating in the very beginning, I believe moderators don't have an important role. That's why I also forgot to introduce myself. My apologies for that. Ilka Staros is my name. I work for GIZ, for the German Technical Corporation, and I am, when I'm not at COP joining such a side event, which is a pleasure, I am usually head of project of a regional cooperation on capacity development for climate policy in Southeast and Eastern Europe, Southern Caucasus, and Central Asia. And that is a project which is financed by the International Climate Initiative of the German government. So having done that, I have the pleasure now to introduce the remaining colleagues here on the panel, but also online. And Aljona Rusnak, very shortly, you introduced yourself already, that you are State Secretary of the Ministry of Environment of Moldova and a bilateral partner of our project. And Aljona serves for the ministry, overseeing actually climate change, pollution prevention, and protected areas, while you are also teaching at USM. You must help me what USM is.
Yeah, it's Moldova State University, so that's why I'll stand up, because it's been, 20 years, professorships, that the sickness already, as we said. Yeah. And I really don't want to have, with my back, some issues, yeah. Yeah, okay, so Republic of Moldova, I will, it's not working? Hey. Yeah. Huh? Yeah. Oh, okay. Shall pause it. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you can look there. I'm still the same as you left me. 5 minutes ago. Yeah. I would just want to share our experience, but I will start with the fact, about brothers and sisters, about family. Last year at COP29, I approached to the NDC pavilion, and we just become the member of NDC. This is how the beloved story start. Because we met Deo, and then Deo introduced us to JZ Bond, and we started a very nice project on NDC, you know. And now we know more than NDC, you know, and Monica, thank you. I consider NDC as a big brother, as I have a big brother, and NECP as a sister, younger sister. So kind of, you know, they have to listen to the big brother, yeah. Now currently we're working on our NDC, updating NDC. We first started drafting it in 2015, updated it in 2020, and now we're working with a bunch of partners, and I never thought that everyone would be so interested in updating our NDC, but we are. It's JZ Bond, it's NDC who is watching us and saying, hello, February is coming, 25, watch out. And then we have UNDP, and then we have FAO, and the gender and finance and so on and so forth. So nevertheless, you know, the ministry is really involved in that. But before coming, you know, to that, you know, I would like to introduce, you know, a bit about our circumstances, about the relevant national circumstances. As you all know, we're in Eastern Europe, so that's why, you know, we kind of have a very interesting approach. Security issues at the border with Ukraine, you know, energetic issues, you know, it kind of frozen during the winter. The prices went up on gas and so on and so forth. So kind of challenging, but the more challenges come, the more interesting it is for the Minister of Environment, because we have set so high targets that I was shocked that there are other countries with smaller targets, and I never know that it is possible. But nevertheless, my predecessor said, no, it's a small country, let's do it. Let's reduce it tough. And moreover, I will open the secret and I will reduce it more. And because, you know, it's a partnership. So we set the targets, you know, up until 2030, and the reverse year is the 1990, to reduce it unconditionally by 70%, conditionally by 88%. Well, not a good homework. I will give you some incentives about reduction GHG emissions in the last 32 years, and we start with the depopulation. You know, people are kind of living quite hard, electricity consumption, heat consumption, you know, so on and so forth. But I will give you a key element that energy is one of the big polluters. Well, the Minister of Energy is around here, and I'm happy that they're here. They will learn what does it mean GHG reduction in an appropriate manner, not just on the paper. They will learn by heart. Of course, you know, we have our transport sector. We do have challenges with transport sector to reduce it, very high targets. Waste, agriculture is really, you know, they have it. We have an afforestation program that we try to get the challenges, you know, on afforestation and to, you know, to somehow deviate, you know, the climate change. National circumstances, just a bit, you know, and I will send you the PowerPoint that, you know, you will have it for future, you know. I don't want to stay more on that. The evolving nature of the country, as I said, the NDC, we started it over. It's, you know, Moldova's responsibility in terms of GHG emissions is low. In 22, Moldova emitted 13.37 meter with the LULUCF. Now we're trying to upscale it, and especially with this program on afforestation, I think that we will upgrade it. Also, Moldova has a very low historical cumulative CO2 emission recording since 1750. It's 0.076. Now we're trying to upscale it. Well, let me tell you a bit of historically. We have left bank, right bank. Unfortunately, from the Soviet period, left bank, it was more industrialized. That's why in 92, with the conflict, the whole industry and the big polluters remained there. What we have now, we're trying to get on the border, you know, so-called border, and to calculate the emissions. But this is a story that you know maybe better than I do. Okay, Just Transition Work Program, and I will start with the Just Transition activities in Moldova. Moldova is currently facing a pressing development challenging characterized by liberalization of the energy market. And Monica is witness that we are coming as brother and sister to the EC, and trying to get, you know, the interest of energy and of the environment. Also, we have high inflation, potential recession, decline of GDP. Moldovan household, particularly those in rural areas, women and people with disabilities, we do have projects on upscaling and attracting on board the women, and especially women in different in energy, in climate, in everything. So we're trying to get and alleviate these differences. We also have key milestones in energy security with established energy vulnerability reduction fund. We are those the pioneer countries that adopted the NECP, trying now to consult it both with our neighbors. But still, we have energy crisis. We have different, challenges in the country, to get it. Just transition activities in Moldova. We have a program accelerating a just transition in the Republic of Moldova. It started last year, $20 billion US. The objective of the program is to accelerate energy diversification and efficiency. I think we're doing quite good. Decarbonizing industries and economic sectors. We're doing quite good because we have long climate action. We just adopted the government decision on MRV. We're doing quite good, in NACP, now updating NDC strategy, environment strategy, energy strategy. So in terms of the adopting, we're doing quite good. And we adopted lately the program on circular economy. So we're trying to green all the economy sectors. Fostering sustainable consumption, strengthening inclusive energy governance, energy vulnerability, and promoting resilience. So this is just several sectors, but we do have other projects, and I'm sure that we will have more. I try to be short.
Thank you very much, Aljona. So move back here to also see our participants. Yes, thank you very much. Before I hand over to the remaining panelists, I will introduce you in a second and also introduce a colleague waiting online. Just one quick question, since we all have in mind what you just said. Moldova seems to be really aware of the relevance of just transition and actually also quite prepared on what needs to be done. Now you have the NDC3 process upcoming, and you just recently worked on the NECP elaboration, so huge work done and still upcoming. Now I wonder how is the government of Moldova actually engaging different stakeholders in the process, including also communities, labor unions, private sector, and how do you involve them actually in the elaboration of the documents or in the execution? Maybe in 2 minutes, you can tell me.
Yeah, I will be really short. Thank you for the question. And as I said, we have left bank, right bank. The NECP is more focused on the right bank, especially because it's really hard to control and to implement measures on the left bank. But nevertheless, from our side, we're trying to get interest from the left bank because they're big polluters there. And they just started now to report in our PRTR system, with the GHG emissions. And now we just adopted the law on industrial emissions and in it enforced recently. And I would like to tell you that all the entrepreneurs came to our the big entrepreneurs that are big polluters, they came to our seminars that show their big interest. Surprising or not, but they're very informed, either from their founders, either from, because, a majority of them, they have climate specialists who are dedicated to introduce, and to implement climate policies. And the NECP was publicly consulted and now is consulted with Romania, Ukraine. This is what we will do, and we're trying to help them from the Ministry of Environment with all the permits. But nevertheless, what we're trying now is to help private sector to decarbonize, to green their techniques. This is the next projects, and even in all the projects, private sector is playing a crucial role. This is what we want to do. We don't want to destroy them. We want to help them. This is really hard, especially state enterprises, because they do have old techniques. I think it's older than I am.
Thank you very much. Yes, with that, I believe it's very interesting to look at another country, and I'm very happy to welcome here at the panel Agim Mazreku, working for UNDP and as an advisor to the Minister of Environment, Spatial Planning and Infrastructure. Welcome here. I would like to use a couple of words to introduce a bit better to everybody else. Agim Mazreku is an expert in climate and energy policy, holding an Master of Science in Climate Science and Policy from the Board College Center for Environmental Policies and a Davis Scholar from the College of the Atlantic. And afterwards, you returned to Kosovo and served in different significant government roles, including Chief of Staff and Senior Advisor to the Minister of Economy. At the moment, Agim is engaged by the United Nations Development Program to lead the Kosovo National Climate Change Council Secretariat and advises directly the Minister of Environment, Spatial Planning and Infrastructure on different topics, especially climate, energy and environment policy. So quite a complex assignment which you have there. And yes, it's great to have you here also at the COP, have a Kosovo delegation at the COP. I have a question to you. How does Kosovo plan to ensure energy security on the one hand while pursuing a just transition in its nationally determined contributions, or if you like, also, of course, you can draw the link to the NECPs, the NECP, and what policies or initiatives are actually in place to diversify energy sources and also protect vulnerable populations during the shift towards renewable energy, especially in the light of the existing energy dependencies in Kosovo. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. It's rather a very complex issue, as everyone knows. And as Monica mentioned, we have the Queen, the coal. We are the fifth largest reserves of lignite, proven reserves in the world, and the second in Europe. So it makes it rather very challenging to be able to look at not only energy transition, but also a just energy transition. This is due to many reasons. I'm going to list a couple of them. Yesterday in this pavilion, actually, NDC partnership, we showcased our first voluntary NDC, and emphasis there on the voluntary part, because, as you mentioned, we are not obligated to draft an NDC as we're not part of the UNFCCC. Therefore, we have not ratified the Paris Agreement, not because we don't want to, but rather we are not allowed to do so. However, in voluntary basis, in keeping up and not leaving the world behind with our ambitions, we went forward into drafting the NDC, which went parallel with the NECP. And I would acknowledge here that, in fact, we were lucky in this process, because the team that was working in the NECP was the same team that was working in the NDC. So that made it very easily with the modeling and everything else. It really did. Today, actually, just today, we received all the proper translations, and we are going to go forward with the public consultations of both NECP and NDC at the same time. We made this promise last year that we were going to showcase our NDC in a voluntary basis. Now, the only difference, although they are unique, unique documents, they're complementary to one another, but the only difference between our NECP and the NDC is that in the NDC we have conditionality. We have modeled the NDC in a way that we can actually go forward with around 42% emission reduction if we implement additional measures. And these are conditional measures upon financing, because Kosovo is not part of many multilateral climate finance and different mechanisms that could allow us to be at the same capacity and having the same access to knowledge platforms and many multilateral mechanisms that could actually get us to the point where we could be even more ambitious. As a result of that, part of our NDC is conditional. Now, the energy sector is the emphasis of the NDC and NECP, though I would acknowledge also that we have included policies and measures in the sector of transportation as we're moving forward with the replacement of a lot of projects. We're in the Ministry of Environment, Spatial Planning and Infrastructure, the biggest ministry in the government. Therefore, we leverage that because now we could impact transportation too. We have domestic railway lines and international railway lines that we have projected, even budgeted. Some of them even works began. And we see this also as a contribution to lowering emissions as a result of not having heavy truck transportation of commerce. Lots of projects and budgeted already ongoing projects on reducing landfilling, therefore reducing methane emissions. In the Ofolu, there's a lot of around 11% of our territory is national parks. This year, instead of drafting strategies, we said, let's work with the police, with the Kosovo police. We formed a green task force, and we conducted up to around 15 actions in the national parks, in river basins, to stop illegal activities that were contributing to deforestation, contributing to both deforestation in the national parks, but also in river basins. And as a result of that, in collaboration with the police and prosecution's office, we managed to implement in a different perspective the implementation of the forestry strategy, which foresees reducing legal deforestation, which contributes to a carbon sink, right? Because if we have more forests, we would have more carbon sequestration. So in all of the sectors, there's quite ambitious policies, but the energy sector remains the unique dilemma, unique challenge here. Having centralized generation in 2 old coal power plants and having such vast reserves of coal requires a lot of thinking forward, but at the same time, we've seen that, and I believe even in the case of our colleagues in Moldova and other countries in the Western Balkans, we see that it is hard to project carbon neutrality by 2050 because of security of supply being the #1 reason. Yes, we could go forward, replace, but how do we achieve security of supply? We have 230 million grant investment from the MCC US agency for battery storage, the largest in the region, would make us the #1 in the world with energy storage capacity per capita, around 350 megawatt hour. This is going to be enforced by 2028, implemented. We have 100 megawatt through the KfW project on solar district heating. We just finished an auction of 100 megawatt. We'll now begin a new 150 wind auction megawatt. We already also have the Kosovo Energy Corporation, the public enterprise, undergo another 100 megawatt project. So there's a lot of penetration of renewables, and there's a lot of storage for it. And yet, in the modeling, security of supply remains a challenge. And reliance on import is one that becomes problematic. As we've seen with the recent conflict in Ukraine, it really impacted all of us with the energy crisis. And so it really changed the way that we projected the energy strategy. Therefore, we're keen to explore other technologies in the future while not jeopardizing energy security, especially given that we are sort of a very unique case as a result of not being part to global discussions on climate, yet having ambitious targets. And I think we need to tread carefully in this, in terms of keeping energy security while moving forward. And the only way to do so is implementing projects slowly but surely. And that is going well so far, as I mentioned a couple of the cases in the energy sector. But on the just energy transition, and I think we have the same case, because the Kosovo Energy Corporation has quite an old employees, the largest employee in Kosovo, one of the largest. All of them are close to retirement. And now the challenge is, where do people come from to experience the transition of this corporation that is currently based on fossil fuels but is implementing renewables. And as a result of that, we just signed an agreement around 30 million with Luxembourg to have vocational training centers for energy efficiency auditors, for renewables. And there's a lot of work done by other entities to UNDP, the GIZ on training, also boosting private sector. We opened the market for the private sector significantly in reducing barriers for solar. Now up to 7 kilowatt system residential. You don't have to have a permit, construction permit. It opened fully the market. We already subsidized around 40 million in solar PV and energy efficiency only last year. So it's moving at a secure pace. Yet it remains always a challenge that you need to tread carefully.
Thank you very much, Agim. Step by step, and always knowing what that energy security is assured, however, moving ahead. Yeah. Thank you very much. I am very glad to introduce you to another colleague participating here in our panel, and I would like to ask the colleagues maybe to share the screen so we can see him. See? Yes, I have to look I will sit here so I can kind of look at you. I know I have to look at the camera in theory. So who you see here is Konstantin Krynytsky. I really hope I pronounce your surname correctly. All right. Thank you very much for joining. Thank you also for your patience that I only introduce you now. He is head of the energy department of the NGO Eco-Action, Ukrainian NGO Eco-Action, and Konstantin can share with us with the view of the civil society organization, and which I think is also very important. Now, he is an expert of the coal industry and just transition of coal regions. Konstantin holds a master's degree in law and has been a just transition campaigner between 2018 and 2020 at the NGO Eco-Action, where he has coordinated the first successful just transition campaign for coal towns in eastern Ukraine. Since 2020, he is Eco-Action's head of the energy department and currently works on the topic of Ukraine's green reconstruction and energy security at the municipal level, with a special focus on carbon-intensive regions. Now, I believe everybody understands why we have you here on the panel. Thanks a lot. And given that you represent an NGO, I would like to ask you actually, how do you evaluate Ukraine's government's current actions and policies related to just transition within the framework of its nationally determined contributions and the NECP process, knowing, of course, the special challenges which the which Ukraine is facing at the moment. And maybe if you allow me to add one more question to make it a bit more complicated. In your view, are there specific areas where the government is excelling or falling short in addressing both climate goals and the socio-economic impact of the war? Konstantin, to you.
Yeah, thank you, Ilka. I hope you can hear me. Everything's fine, I hope.
Yes.
Yes, thanks for the invitation and great to join you, even though unfortunately online. So I think for Ukraine, it's kind of a twofold question. On the one hand, there is a room for praise, I would say a big praise, as just transition is one of the topics of the discussion at the national level, starting roughly since 2019, 2020, and it still plays a role. It's still on the radar, even though the Russian invasion started in 2022. Specifically, just transition of coal regions took prominent stage and is highlighted, discussed, and worked on, not least thanks to the Ukrainian NGOs advocacy efforts to put this topic on the agenda. And I would say here we have a big progress. On the national level, 4 years ago, there was created a coordination center for the just transition of coal regions. Currently, there's been the development of the state just transition program until 2030 for coal regions. GIZ is implementing a huge project helping coal communities in Western Ukraine, closer to the Polish border, to devise their just transition action plans. Maybe you remember that at COP29 in Glasgow in 2021, Ukraine for the first time announced its coal phase-out date of 2035 for the state-owned generation. So we have all this progress, and literally a year ago, an association of coal communities was created also around the topic of just transition. So I think there is kind of like a big process around that, very robust, very vibrant. And when you look at Ukrainian NECP and NDC, NECP was adopted this summer, NDC was last updated in 2021. We have specific mentions of just transition there, but they're just that, they are mentions, and they are mentioning only and specifically coal regions. NECP has only one measure about the development of state just transition program, NDC has only 2 mentions of just transition for the whole text, all focused on coal regions. And that's great. That's what the NGOs and the NGO I represent in Action, what we were advocating for years. But I think we ourselves as NGO and our government, we kind of trapped ourselves in this discussion. We kind of created this cage where in the center, like just transition is meant only for coal regions. But when you look at the like climate adaptation mitigation and the need for bringing down the greenhouse gas emissions, just transition is not only coal communities, it should also encompass other carbon intensive communities, other communities who are dependent on coal, on fossil fuels. We have communities around gas extraction, oil, communities built around heavy industry which uses fossil fuels. So we kind of locked ourselves into this understanding of just transition, specifically of coal regions. We can use this example because there is already huge work being done, like a positive example, like look what can be done. But just transition in Ukrainian national documents, they are not mainstreamed to other sectors, and also they are not mentioned. What Monica said at the beginning, in like innovation and other areas of NSCP, for example. So I think for us, we need to. This is like kind of the room for improvement. We need to broaden the understanding to other carbon intensive regions, so they're also not forgotten and also not like left behind. And I think that's what from our side as civil society organization, we will be advocating for the revision of NECP and the development of another update to NDC, which will happen, I think, next year. So I think this will be one of the topics that we will be really, really focusing on, that just transition is also it's more encompassing than just talking about state programs for coal regions. So I think, yeah, we have like good progress. It's already like on the agenda. We're kind of starting to understand what is just transition, but through the example of coal regions. But we need to think so much like more. We need to have a more expansive view of that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Konstantin, for that insight, and actually a very interesting observation that it is really needed to extend the just transition view and try to not, let's say, get locked in considering coal regions only. Yeah. Thank you very much. I would like to get our two keynote speakers involved here. You have been listening to what Konstantin, Agim, and Aljona shared from their country perspective. It would be interesting to get your insights. Are there any direct reactions which you have, something where you say, okay, but maybe you miss an argument here, or something you would like to add in reaction to what you hear?
Thanks, Ilka. Actually, two things strike me when I listen to our discussion. First one, actually, there's quite a broad consensus. Like, we're not really arguing with each other. We have, I think, a similar understanding. And what is interesting also that in the end, change is happening. We heard in the two examples, but also the need to understand just transition in a broader way. And I think as Konstantin was hinting, that it's not even the coal regions, but now there's a realization that a lot of people are impacted more. And one of the things, we had a Just Transition Forum actually in Pristina recently, and we had one expert there who was very, very brutal, and he said, you know, there's a slogan which I really hate, and I hear it nonstop. Don't leave anyone behind. And he said, what does that mean? And he had a point that actually we never defined the one. Where is the limit to just transition? Is it the worker? Is the worker plus his family? Is it the service provider who cuts the hair of the worker and is dependent that the worker of the mine gets income so he can pay for the hairdresser? Where is the limit of just transition? And we never, I think, really got down to crunching this question. So I think, yeah, a question from my side at the end.
Thank you, Monica. I actually had the same message. No, I really realized that we're all basically going in the same direction and have the understanding, and maybe adding to this, not leave everyone behind. I think we're all in this boat. We're all in this earth. I think when we think about everyone, we just really mean not only about the goal, the just transition, but really, and that was a little bit my point into making this a central point for government, and having this vision, so that everything that is done, all the plans or the targets, it being the NECP or the NDC or whatever sectoral plan, development plan, everything has that as a part. So if it's intrinsically part of that, then even if different teams work on the documents, then one doesn't really lose that vision, that one holding thing. So that would be, maybe a summary. But thank you everyone for the insights. Really, really interesting.
Yes, thank you very much. Looking at the time, we have only a bit of time left. It's a pity indeed, because I have the feeling discussions actually just started, and it would be really interesting to open up actually to listen also from those who are here. I see one raised hand. I would say we shift back. We have 5 minutes, and I have to run to another event, I have to admit. So I have to be very brutal when it comes to time planning. I would say I hand over very quickly to you to share or to ask a question. I give you 1 minute. Is that okay? I'm really sorry, but we can use the time afterwards. Oh, there's a mic. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. My name is Rohit Magotra, and I'm from India. So I think India is one lead country where, a lot of efforts are going into achieving our NDC goals. But I'm not going to talk about coal, but the way the government has targets to achieve NDCs also through transition from the IC-based vehicles, engine-based vehicles, commercial engines, IC-based vehicles to ZEB, zero emission vehicles. And in India, we have a lot of employment which is generated by the IC sectors, the engine manufacturers, so which are further run by diesel and petrol. So I think that transition is a question which we are addressing in India, looking at how that transition is going to impact those 1 million workers, and also not leaving anyone behind in terms of how does it affect the economy, how does it affect, the households which are dependent. So I think this is also one aspect of the transition, and which we should also aim at looking at. Recently we heard Volkswagen, the factories being leading to so many to the loss of employment so much. But I think this is also one question which should be included while we are looking at NDCs. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. Yes, certainly. I don't know if there's a reaction from colleagues. Agim.
I'll be very brief. Just on the broader, because it really struck me what Monica was saying, what a colleague from India was saying. You mentioned my previous position in the government. When we first came 4 years ago, previously there was plans for a new coal power plant. And the first discussion was, okay, how do we deal with the new energy strategy? And with my colleagues, I had to argue a lot on the just transition, especially at the broader level. We are not part of UNFCCC. We don't have any targets. We're excluded from international finance on climate. Why do we need to do anything that really contributes to mitigation when we are not even historically responsible as a region for emissions throughout? And this is the case for a lot of countries are looking at this. But I think that now it's time for us to understand that this is something that, even though we're not historically responsible, it could be in good faith that we move forward, but this careful transition needs to be just also from this broader macro level of who provides that finance, how is that channeled, how is that implemented effectively, and in the end, that's also another perspective that I think it's both macro and micro level that needs to be considered throughout, especially for the region.
Thank you very much for your reaction. Konstantin, I try to look at you in case you raise your hand, so I know it's challenging. we have to close a round of discussion. I feel really sorry because it would have been really nice to engage further, but we can, after the hour has ended, we can, exchange because I don't know, maybe it's only me having to run away. But we can leave also our contacts, of course, in case you're interested. I would like to give everybody from our panel one chance to share either a takeaway from this past hour discussion, one takeaway, and you have really 30 seconds to share this takeaway with us, or something in the context of just transition, what you believe should happen, what would make it more easy. Yeah, you have a choice. And I would say, Aljona, you will be the person last, because then you can close the event. So Konstantin, I hand to you maybe to start.
Yeah, very quickly, I would say for Ukraine, the biggest challenge now is the Russian full-scale invasion, the full-scale war. And I think, as always, wars, they speed up processes, they speed up history. So we have destruction of our energy system and coal power plants. So the problem is very acute. So I think for Ukraine, just transition, we are talking about green reconstruction through renewables and energy efficiency measures, and just transition principles should become those principles at the backbone of Ukraine's reconstruction. I really think that just transition can really help also reconstruct Ukraine.
Actually, I think I would just reduce it to one sentence. Say one just transition story everywhere. In all your documents. So that's, for me, the slogan.
Thank you. I think we all know what needs to happen, and just transition definitely is already on its way to close that implementation gap. I think this was very clear from this event that the will is there, but we need to speed up the process and not forget anyone.
One sentence, secure steps, but steps ahead nonetheless.
Okay, thank you.
Sure together.
Well, it's really hard when everyone was stating and stealing my ideas. So everything was said, and I will quote, the logo of this COP. Don't talk, just act. This is what, no one behind. And we have to think not about technology and technologization about everything, because human being is and nature and everything is the main. And, the main principles that Mother Nature, created. So let's think about them and rethink about own, comfort. Let's do it jointly, a joint comfort. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thanks for joining us to the event here today. And of course, also many thanks to our online participants, and to Konstantin, many greetings to Ukraine. And please stay safe. Have a good day. Yeah, bye-bye.